It's exciting to see some fellow LAUSD librarians out there. Welcome, everybody. Feel free to put in the chat where you're from. It'd be fun.
I'm going to give them, there's still people coming in, so I'm going to wait a few minutes until that slows down a little bit.
Sure, no problem. Yeah.
Fine. Because officially it's not 1 o'clock yet.
Right. Yeah, we can wait a minute to get started. But now I have something to read in the chat as I wait.
Yeah, you get a chance to do that. I didn't check your sched to see how many had posted they were interested, so I'm not really sure how many kind of have an estimate.
There were about 100 on there, I think, when last time I looked last week. But I know like for every time slot I checked about 3.
Right.
So obviously,
it gives people a little bit of chance to go back and know that they want to watch that recording.
Exactly. That's kind of what I was thinking. Like, I'll mark the ones that I really want to go back and record or watch the recording of. And so somebody said 121.
Oh, yeah, 121.
Okay. But again, so LA County, so okay, all over the state. I see some people.
Okay, well, it's 1 o'clock now. So, oh, wait, one more. Admit. Welcome, everyone. We are in Beyond One Hit Wonders, Developing Effective Collaborations, the Pandemic Edition. Our presenter, I'm sorry? Our presenter is Lisa Cheby, and she is a teacher librarian at Verdugo Hills High School in Los Angeles. And you can find, I'm going to be posting her links in the chat, but you can also find it in Sched. And there will be 4 sessions, so you can, 4 parts of this session, so you can ask questions after each session. But if you feel like you need a clarifying question, please feel free to put that in the chat, and we'll be monitoring that for you.
Thank you, Shelley. And thank you, everybody, for coming today. So let me go ahead and get my presentation sharing started here. So my name is Lisa Cheby, and I'm a teacher librarian at Verdugo Hills High School, which is in Los Angeles Unified School District. This is my first virtual presentation. So hopefully it's going to go well. So I wanted to first talk about collaborations, kind of the origins of this particular presentation, and my experience with collaboration, why I'm presenting on collaboration. So this actually, I did this presentation last year because I do a lot of collaboration in my library, and people would often ask me about that. So everything from doing student portfolios. So this is a landing page for student portfolios. I'm not going to talk about the actual units because that would be a different session. And if you're interested in digital portfolios, go to Anthony Devine's session on that, because that's where I got all this from. So I do, kind of shorter collaborations with a lot of teachers in all the different academies at our school on student portfolios. Some short units like this one here was a found poem unit, just looking at some primary sources from the Holocaust, United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. And then I have longer research units that I do with teachers that last anywhere from 5 to 10 weeks of in-depth research. And so samples of the 9th grade. So if you go here, you'll see samples from the 9th grade research, the 12th and 11th and 12th grade research units. So people often ask me, how do you get teachers to collaborate with you long-term like that? So last year I was like, oh, I'll do a session on that. And then when I sat down to put together the session, I was like, I just have really cool teachers that I get to work with. Like it was a struggle for me to really think, what do I have to say about this? So it was a real learning process for me in doing that. And so in that process, I kind of broke it down to four different things that it's really more of a mindset um, than any like to-do list of this will work for collaboration. And I really wanted to create a presentation that would be individualized, that you can bring back and make it your own, because I think collaborations are unique. It's unique to your campus, to what your passions are. So a lot of my collaborations, I think, came from my vision and my passion for what I wanted to happen in my library. Um, a process of interviewing and learning more about designing different types of lessons and being able to identify what kind of design to use for what kind of interaction with teachers. And then the long process of what I call auditioning. And so in this, you're auditioning for each other, really. You're both auditioning for the collaborator role with each other. You can see if this is somebody you want to work with. They can see what you're doing if they want to work with you. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about delivery and assessment and how to do that. And that's the part where I'll talk, particularly in distance learning. Although a lot of the things I use in distance learning, I was using beforehand. So I'll talk a little bit about how to negotiate that with your collaborators on your campus. So visions and values. At the end, the session I did last year, after I went through my crisis of, I don't know what to say. I don't know how I made it happen. It felt a lot like love. So I really had to search and think, what did I do that might be different and useful? And the conclusion of that session, which is where I'm going to start out this one, was, it's really, there's this negotiation, I think, that we have to do as teacher librarians between being welcoming, but we don't want to be the doormat. Like, we have definite values and priorities in what we want to happen in our library, in the role that we want the library to have in our school, and I just did my share, and the role that we want the library to have in our schools. And we have our own content standards that we have to teach, which I think many of our colleagues on campus are not aware of. So that idea of, I want to be welcoming, but I'm not there just to kind of do what other people think I should be doing or wish I were doing. And I really wanted to make the library kind of a sold out space, like a very, exclusive club, in the sense that, like, real learning is happening here. It's a place that people want to get into. So that was my goal, and I think the visioning really goes into that. So I want to start off this session. I'm going to ask you to do a little bit of visioning. So if you don't have pen and paper next to you, or if you have your CSLA journal where you're taking all your notes or whatever, please do have that. So the first thing I want you to think about is, what is your jam? What is your brand in your library? And I think that I know when I started, I kind of felt like I'm supposed to be doing everything. And I would go to professional development sessions and conferences and talk with other librarians and, follow blogs and what librarians are doing on Twitter and all of that. And there's things about all this stuff, book talks, maker spaces. Is it a study center? Is there tutoring there? What's happening? And I think I felt a little bit overwhelmed. And a lot of those things didn't really connect with my campus, with the students and the faculty on my campus. So I really had to think about, what is it that I want to do? And I didn't connect with what I wanted to do, which was, my passion is really around research and information literacy instruction, and increasing the amount of instruction that's happening on campus and really transforming how research is taught on our campus. So that's kind of what I focused on. And also just promoting some independent reading. So I have the picture there of when I, identified genres. I did the genre stickering. I haven't separated it all out. But take a minute. I would like you to take a minute and just kind of jot down on your paper, from this list or something else, one or two things that you know, if you had to brand your library, what would it be? Would it be a makerspace? Would it be a research center? Is it a study center? Of course, we want elements of all of these in there, but what is the brand that you're trying to sell in your library? So you can choose one of these or something else. Whatever comes to mind, just kind of gut instinct. What is it that you're trying to sell on your campus? And then this one, I'm actually going to set my timer because I like to set my timer because I can't tell when time is passing. And I'm going to give you 2 minutes. I'll give you 3 minutes. 3 minutes to, I want you to do a free write about value. What is a teacher librarian worth? And I think unless we really connect with our value, we can't build strong collaborations and knowing what it is that you're bringing to the table. Because again, you don't want to be that doormat. You want to be welcoming, but you want to have a clear idea of what that sold out thing that is that everybody wants. So I'm going to give you, 3 minutes to just kind of write down what is your value, how do you value your work, and what value do you have to offer potential collaborators on your campus. So let's just take 2 minutes to do that. Okay, I'm going by the people who have their cameras on to look like they're done. The 3 people. So I think my alarm is going to go off in a few seconds. So from that, so you have your, for those who, I know a few people just jumped in. So you have your brand, your jam, thinking about what your value is. I now ask you to target, up to 4 areas. I wouldn't do more than 4 areas that you want to sell and increase collaboration on in your library. There's the timer. In your library. And I'm going to invite you to put some of those in the chat. And I'd really love to see what areas it is that you are looking to increase collaboration within your library. Okay, great. Local library. Okay. reluctant staff in general. Okay, in-depth research, science and STEAM. I see some different magnet programs in there that people want to collaborate with. Esports, interesting. All right, so you can, hopefully you can get some ideas what other people are putting in there also. So, you know, you want to have in your mind as I continue to go through this. I know this part seems like you're like, is she going to get to the what to do? And I am, but I want you to have in mind, I want you to, you know, really take the time and take more time than 2 minutes to really think about what the value is. And maybe that'll become clearer as I give some examples here. So once you know what you want to do, so for me, I really wanted to build a scope and sequence, 4 years of information literacy embedded into classes throughout the school. And so one of the things that I had to do is I really had to start to create space, both mental space, shift my perspective, shift how the teachers think about the library and librarian in the library on campus. You know, it took me a good year of correcting my principal for him to call me a teacher librarian and not put me in meetings with out of classroom teachers. And then I also had to think about the space. If I wanted to teach information literacy instruction, I needed the students to be able to access what I thought of as the textbook, which were our databases. So LAUSD is extremely fortunate in that we have about 18 different subscriptions for our students to access. And when I first got to my library, we had about 15 computers and an average class size, I would say, of 35. And so it took about 2 years, but I was able to get the computer lab built because I insisted that in order for students to really learn how to do college level research, they each had to be able to sit at a computer and go in and do the research themselves. Watching their friend do research is not the same thing. So one of the things is you look at your set of values, your goals, your vision, what space do you need? Again, either that mental space, are you being asked to do things that don't fit with that vision? The other area, if you look at the picture in the lower left, we used to have these big 6-foot long wooden tables in our library, about 10 of them, with these old wooden chairs. It was not comfortable to sit and read and study, but it was great for meetings and for testing. And that's not how I wanted the library to be seen. And again, I was very fortunate that at some point my principal came to me and offered to get new furniture for the library specifically, so it could be a place that's more conducive to different flexible grouping for students to come and study in small groups. And you can see there's some couches and comfy chairs for reading in the library. So both, again, in that mind shift, that mental space, and maybe physical space, what do you need to create for your vision to happen? So once you have all of that, you know what it is that you're trying to sell. You're very clear in what your values are, because people are going to always be asking you to compromise those. Start interviewing and designing. And I think as teacher librarians, we're so eager to have people to come to the library, which is great, but sometimes we don't take the time to really follow these best practices of really sitting down and forcing the reference interview. Teachers are very rushed and they don't want to do this. So you kind of have to be a little sneaky about it, I think. So I created a form, but some of the things that you want to make sure you're clear on before the teacher comes in. And part of this is also to conserve your energy and focus your energy to the places where you're going to really reap those collaborations. So the first thing is really thinking about student outcomes. What is the teacher expecting the student to be able to do when they leave the library? Align it to standards if you can, either the Common Core standards and or the library standards. What time frame are they expecting? What time frame can they accommodate? Because often, like teachers will be like, "Can I come in on Tuesday?" And you can teach them research, like it's going to happen in, you know, one period. or they want it to happen like over 2 periods or something, they think they just don't have realistic expectations. What skills specifically are they expecting you to cover with the students? What is the final product? And is your lesson tied into that? And what are some of the teachers' goals? Like, what do they want to do? A lot of teachers don't really want to collaborate. And so I found that setting my expectations, trying to force them to collaborate in a way that they don't want to, was really counterproductive. Why did that link not work? I have it open here though. Okay, so I created this library form, and teachers would often want to, and the other thing is teachers don't often would come in and they wouldn't really, they think I would just like be able to, have a lesson out of the blue, that would address their specific needs for their class. And in order to prevent that, I really tried to ask them to fill out the form before they came to see me. And this was my way of sort of making them really think what their expectations were in coming to the library. It also created that sense, as I talked about at the beginning, like this is a place that's like important and special, and it's just not like a last minute lesson plan to come to the library. And so I wanted to create the perception that, I'm a co-teacher, I need time to prep, just like you prep your lessons, and I need to be clear on what your expectations are. So a lot of it is, logistical stuff, the subject matter, the class level, the time period, the day when they want to come in. But then other things like, how much time do they really expect this lesson to take? Sometimes they only want a half a period, and I prepare something for a whole period. And then, what that leads to often is both of us being a little bit dissatisfied. So in thinking about the form, and you don't have to use a form, but however you want to do it, conversations, going around to the room and meeting them on their conference periods, that's up to you. But this form really helped me to kind of, clarify these things. Oops, I clicked over on the wrong side. Really helped me to clarify what it is that they expected. And then when the teacher leaves the library, we both had a really good experience, and I could look my best to them, even if it was something really simple. And then that means later they might be more likely to come back and work with me. And that really gets into the part of the form that really gets into that is down here, the reason for the visit request, and what is it that they're expecting. And I started adding in clear examples so they knew, like, if you said library orientation, this is what you're going to get. Because sometimes a teacher would come in and be like, I want a library orientation, but then they're expecting a research lesson, or they want a research lesson and they're expecting library orientation. So being really clear on what teachers want. If teachers don't want to fill out the form, I'll email them and I'll ask them all these questions anyhow, and they'll have to answer it. The form makes it a little bit easier. But it's really the start of the conversation. Some teachers will fill out the form and they'll do something, they'll just check the path of least resistance, something not listed. I don't know how long it's going to take. But that's an opening for me then to have a face-to-face conversation with them. When it comes to the research units, again, I specify really clearly here the time periods. So this interviewing process is really important in the next step in setting realistic expectations for yourself and for the teacher so that you have a really positive experience. So when teachers fill out the form, I think about what kind of investment are we making in this? So everybody who fills out the form obviously is not at that collaboration level, even if that's my goal is to have the collaboration level interaction with as many teachers as possible. So, but if it's a cooperation, if they're just saying, can you teach students how to format citations? Then I'm consulting with them. When do you want to do that? How much time are you putting in? But I'm working pretty autonomously. I'm going to do my citation lesson, and that's it. I'm not going to try to, upsell them when they get to the library, because then the teacher will just be kind of annoyed that I didn't do that simple thing that they asked me. And I'm going to be frustrated because I'm putting in more time and not getting any support in that. So I remember like people would come in and they just want a simple research project where they'd ask me to do research, and then they would kind of undermine some of what I did, allowing students to just go use Google or something. The coordination is maybe a little bit more in depth, a more limited project. So could you help students find information topics on topics in sociology? Or the students are maybe just researching one person, doing a short biography report on a historical figure, and they want to introduce them to the databases. So in this one, I would be leading, the teacher would probably be following. The objectives are very limited. The final product is very limited. And then there's that collaboration level of where we're equal partners. We're really co-designing the whole unit. We're talking about co-assessments and how both our standards fit in there. And it's an ongoing in-depth conversation to create those meaningful projects. So that intake form, that interviewing, being clear on which level we're working at is really important to building successful relationships on your campus, and then inviting in those deeper collaborations. It also makes room for the deeper collaboration because you're not trying to collaborate with people who only want cooperation. So
you said the link into your form is not working in the
yeah, I will fix that.
Okay, because they were wanting to know if they could have access to a copy of that.
Yes, I was trying to make a copy that you can make a copy of just before the presentation. This is why you should never change your link just before the presentation. And so I will definitely fix that right after the presentation. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So in auditioning, so now you did your intake, people come into the library, and again, and I kind of talked to this a little bit, you're auditioning for them. If they come in, you want to do what they want and have it be a good experience. And then maybe that will open the door to sell that longer collaborative relationship. But also, I think this is something that I fell into in the beginning of my time as a teacher librarian. Like, I have to please everybody. And again, going back to that welcome mat image, right? I have to please everybody. I'm supposed to work with every teacher, and it's just not possible. So I did a little, for the math teachers in the room, I did a little word problem here, a little math problem about, how many, we have 4 periods at my school. I have 1 conference period, let's say 12 possible collaborations a week at my school with our faculty, about 65 faculty members teaching 3 classes a week. That's 195 classes a day. Clearly just looking at that, I'm not going to be collaborating with everybody. So my schedule is constantly full, but I really only work with like a handful of teachers. And by working with them, I see many students over and over and over again. So I'm working with about 200 students on in-depth research per term. And in that way, I'm reaching the majority of the school. But, just keep in mind, you just need a few really positive and ongoing relationships and that deep collaboration. I think being realistic. And then, as people come in and as you get to know people on your campus, I like this idea of like, you're being your own matchmaker. Who is it that you really want to pitch to and work with on your campus? So on my when I started at Verdugo, it was hard. People were not used to coming to the library for actual instruction. And so one of the people I identified with that I really wanted to collaborate with, because I had my vision of how I wanted to teach research, but I didn't get a lot of opportunity to do that. And so one of these STEM teachers was doing his master's in educational technology, and he came to me for some advice about technology because I was seen as a techie person on campus. I feel like all that's changed because now we've all had to become techie people, and I've lost a little bit of my edge on that, which is fine. That's great, and I'm learning a lot from my colleagues. So, but at the time, he came to me, how can I? And he wanted to study how students learn with blended learning and how that impacted student performance. And so I suggested, let's do a research unit. I'll create the lessons because this is something that I wanted to do. And to half the class, I'll deliver it in person, and the other half will get it in this online asynchronous format. And so that, turned out to be a great collaboration. It allowed me to develop a bunch of lessons and to develop a blended learning sort of bank of lessons that I can then sell to other teachers. So once I had that down, one of our new English teachers came to me, and that we just bought Study Sync. Some people might recognize the interface here. And Study Sync had a lot of online components, and they had these research components. And she's like, oh, maybe you can teach these research lessons. And so, I went to the site, and I was like, this was my opportunity to really pitch my idea of what research should look like. So here they give them some links to okay articles, not databases, and that's what Study Sync calls research. And so I pitched that to her, and she went with it and became one of, somebody that I continue to collaborate with, and one of my best supporters on campus that got other people to come in and collaborate with me. So really think about, who shares those values, and just, who do you communicate well with? So on that little paper where you were rewriting your values, your vision, maybe write down, who would you love to work with on your campus? Is there a teacher that you think you could learn a lot from? Is there a teacher who is doing something similar to what you're doing? Is there the teacher who's always innovative and open to trying new things? If you just need 2 or 3 people to get that going. So focus on that and pursue that, and maybe some of these strategies can help in approaching them. Once I had people coming into the library, even for those short, just cooperative units, I started doing everything on websites and creating this web page. I don't really use this anymore, so it's a little bit outdated, but it's still there. And many of the outlines are pretty similar. But I started, and I'm going to talk about this in the last section a little bit more, but I started putting everything on a website because I wanted to be able to have things directly to the student. It helped me stay organized. I'm not, people think I'm super organized, kind of, because I have to organize myself because I'm a little bit scattered. And so, this was a way for me to stay organized and remember what I did each lesson with each class when I'm working with a lot of classes. And so now, once I started accumulating some of these lessons, I could sit down with the teacher also in that interviewing process and say, here's what I did with somebody else's class. I can duplicate this and make some adjustments. Look at it and let me know what you think. If it was great, I can send them a link. What do you like? What do you want to change? And then again, start building more of those collaborations. It also really helps because people are now more willing to collaborate with me because they see that I'm actually a teacher. I wasn't a teacher at my school. I taught at a different school, so people didn't know me as a teacher when I came to Verdugo. And I think in a lot of schools, people don't understand what teacher librarians do. Hopefully at your school, it might be different. But to really sell myself as a co-teacher, all of this really helped. And, and I just remembered, Shelley, that I said I was going to pause for questions at each section, and I have forgotten to do that. So,
oh, you're good. There haven't been any more questions.
Okay, great. Perfect. So the final thing that I want to talk about is delivery and assessment. So now that you have, had some, hopefully some success in getting teachers to fill out the form and come into the library and start developing some of those lessons, I think the delivery and assessment is a key part to really creating a strong collaboration with your teachers and to build those. And so obviously, this is obvious now because we have to use these different platforms, but these were things that I was using even before we went into distance learning, because it was really important for me to be able to share information directly with the student. And if I'm not going classroom to classroom, so they can't walk into the classroom and, you know, there's my lesson up on the agenda or the board or something. And for students who miss class, they need a way to be able to access the lessons that they missed or to be able to review. Unlike going to class every day, so most classes, if I'm working on a 10-week unit, they'll come into the library once a week. And so in between, if they have questions, they need a way to contact me. It's not like they walk into fourth period and I'm there to answer their questions about yesterday's lesson. So using these different platforms became really essential to me. And it also allowed me, again, to develop a different relationship with the students. So not only did the teachers really see me as an instructional leader and as an instructor on campus, but the students did. The students realized I can go to the librarian and ask for questions and ask for help. And she actually knows something other than checking out books, which I feel like was the big perception on campus, that that's the lady who checks out books. And, you know, that's about it. So this really helped me to develop one-on-one relationships with more students to really get to know their work and their skills and their interests. And again, to develop that deeper collaboration with teachers. So when we were on campus, before people started using our learning management system, which is Schoology and LAUSD, you know, as a way to kind of really collaborate and co-create the lessons with the teachers, I use Google Classroom. And so here in Google Classroom, I go into classwork, I can lay out my units, I can have all the lessons in here. And this also allowed the teacher and I to access student work simultaneously. And I think all of this is really important because we want to constantly be discussing and assessing that informal assessment. How are students doing? So after I teach the question formulation technique, before we move on to keywords and concepts, I have to know that they have questions. If they weren't able to develop research questions, we can't move on. And then the teacher and I would need to discuss, how are we going to reteach that? What needs to be done differently? So having this classroom space, I think, and delivering that information in a collaborative way is really important. When I had everything just like on my own Google Drive, but not somewhere where the teacher could see it, it also was not as effective. So here it's something, you know, both of us are administrators in the Google Classroom. We can both make adjustments to due dates. While I help assess work, I try not to get into the grading aspect of it, partly because I don't, two of my college degrees were at schools that didn't have grades. So grades, like I think grades are just like, they feel a little bit arbitrary to me. So I try not to get into the number grading, and also that's the teacher ultimately has to give the final grade for the class. But I definitely go in and I will assess, I will leave comments for students on how to, you know, maybe improve their question or clarify their question or their concept charts, or, you know, why is it that their queries aren't yielding the results that they want? And I give them all that kind of feedback. And then on their final presentations, but I try to leave the letter grade up to the teacher. But in here, we can adjust all that. They can adjust the points, standards to match whatever they're doing in their classroom, but I can still see the work and give that more qualitative feedback to the students. So that's really essential, I think, for the deeper level of collaboration that's happening. So again, you know, this here is a little bit more of an example of earlier lessons that I did that was a little bit more, you know, me leading and the teacher supporting. You're not going to be able to see my Schoology, but it's, you know, it's a learning management system. But, you know, in here, if I go in here, actually I have the tab open, you know, so this is really great because when I work with teachers, they add me to their course. So you can see I have lots of courses that I'm working with, and I'm able to put all my lessons directly into their course. And again, this is fantastic as a teacher librarian because it gives me statistics on how students are meeting the model school library standards. It really, again, deepens that collaboration and that level of trust between the teacher and me because I'm in their course. And of course, if I change something that might affect their grades, and there has to be a lot of conversation around that. And we have to kind of bring that up to another level of exactly, which standards are we going to use? So this teacher, Dr. Norton, she wants me to use all the Common Core state standards. In other classes, I get to use the library standards and track what students are learning according to the model school library standards and attaching them to the actual lessons. And then I can create discussions. I can get students, that informal assessment, seeing what students are learning, what they're responding, what they're getting, what they're not getting throughout the course here. And the students see it appear in the course. And therefore now the library isn't that thing that, only people who, the small periphery of students who want to go and hang out in the library and do, but this is actually part of, their preparation for college and career. So it kind of brings my role at the school to a new level. And again, I think that fosters other types of collaboration down the road.
They want to know how you feel about Schoolology groups.
I love Schoology groups. So I'll go to that. I was going to talk a little bit about assessments, but I mean, I'm in here. I have my library group. This is and I guess on the level of collaboration, I went to my administrators when we went into distance learning, and I said I want to create a group, and I'm going to add everybody in the school to the group. Is that okay? And they're like, sure. So this is my library and distance learning, and I really tried to create a space here in Schoology for the library. Like if you wanted to know something, and students would come to me, like my Zoom's not working, but in the library they would come to me, my email's not working or whatever. Here maybe it's like my Zoom's not working, and so I created this space. I don't really look. I guess there's somewhere in there's analytics to see if people are using it, but sometimes people do tell me they use it. So I think it's useful, and I have the ebooks in there and tutorials and videos on all of that. So, and as you can see, I can put updates here about things that are going on in the library, and that will go out to everybody on campus. And then I know people get them because students will, or actually parents sometimes will email me like, why am I getting these updates? Because if the parents in Schoology, they get these updates. So I think they're great. I don't know if that answers your question or if there was a more specific question about Schoology groups, but I think maybe you meant about Schoology groups for delivering lessons, and that does not work because you can't really deliver, you can't attach a Google document in a group and have it assigned to students. So in that sense, I wouldn't use Schoology groups. Yeah, okay. So I think that answered the question. And I think I might have missed the question in there.
Yeah, there's one new question that says, in the beginning, you mentioned you developed a scope and sequence for the grade levels at your site. Would you be able to share what you have created with us?
Yes, I don't have it handy right now. And that's the other presentation I've done in the past, but I will, let me go back to, I can talk about the, which was the final part. I was going to talk about that co-assessment and teaching, and I'll kind of address that a little bit with this particular student presentation. So Dr. Norton, who I mentioned, she was one of my first long-term collaborators at Verdugo. And actually, I co-presented with her the first time I presented at CSLA a few years ago. And so this really kind of shows the depth of our collaboration. I had if I go back here to my Google Classroom, like you can see, I kind of had this idea of I wanted to teach research as a process, and I wanted to disconnect it from the research paper, which I felt was really limiting for students and for teachers, and often like the paper becomes the thing. And I'm looking at time. So I have these different, areas. We go through the questioning process, keywords and concepts, queries and search strategies, the gathering of evidence, and then synthesizing it into something, but not a paper. This teacher, Mrs. Spearman, she likes to do the annotated bibliographies. And we often do that with the 10th, 11th, and 12th graders after many of them have done the, I lost my presentation, hold on. Oh, there it is, sorry. After they've done this 9th grade research unit that Dr. Norton and I have developed. So I had all those sections, and one of the things that makes her a great collaborator is that she pays attention to what I'm doing. So, I'm sure all of you have experience. You come in and you're doing this research lesson, how to use databases. The teacher doesn't know how to use the database, but the teacher's over grading. This goes back to auditioning. Like you can come in anytime you want, but you're not going to be the teacher I'm going to reach out to when I have new exciting ideas of what I want to do. Somebody like Dr. Norton or Mrs. Heerman, those are the teachers I'm going to go to because we're really co-teaching. And so as I'm going through these units, she starts to create a template for how she wants the students to present their work. So we now use this template, and we decided they're going to have to get up and present their research process, and they're going to have to present what they learned about their topic. And we want those two things, those thought processes, to be distinct. And so she created this template for my lessons, which is great. That to me is sort of the peak representation of what I learned about collaboration as a teacher librarian, is co-creating these products. I'm doing something and that sparks an idea in the teacher, how we're going to do this. So as you go through, the students talk about the question formulation technique, and now they have to use everything that they did with me. So like all those, 8 to 10 lessons that we did, that work that you created is now meaningful because it's going to feed your presentation. If you didn't do that work, you're going to have an empty presentation. And now it becomes meaningful, becomes part of their learning, an important part of learning, and they're asked to reflect on it. They talk about the concept chart. And then I love she added in the, when we started the concept chart, this is the hardest thing to teach. The students are always really confused in the beginning. And it's just one of those things that we're like, yeah, we know this is confusing and weird, but trust us, it's going to make sense in the next lesson. It's such a weird way to teach something, perhaps. That really throws the students off, but they go back and they reflect on, the concept chart. How did you feel when we started it? What's your new understanding by the time you finish research? Because really the concept chart, you need it to move forward, but it doesn't really make sense until you're kind of done with the research. You don't see what you were doing until you've done it once. So they go through that, and then the database.
They would like to have a copy of this presentation you're showing them right now.
There is a link in this presentation. So it's linked in that final slide here. And maybe I'll do that. I was debating what I wanted to present on, the research unit or the collaboration. They kind of go hand in hand for me. Next time maybe I'll do that. But please, look at it, and if you have questions. And do we get an email of everybody who attended like, do we have a list of everybody who's here? Shelley, do you know if there's a way to generate that?
I don't think we're getting that, but you can go into your SCED and modify it, or you can use Discourse and put it under presenters.
Okay. Great. So I can share the presentation I did last year around the research unit, if people want that. And then, so that's, you know, again, that, it's just great. And then they, you know, they're also learning a lot of tech stuff, like how to, you know, they have to learn how to link. You're not going to see, you probably won't see there because that's the student owned. But if I open it up, I think, you know, I can go in and I can see their, the articles they downloaded, and they have to do these annotations. So they're learning a lot of tech skills along the way. And again, a lot of this are things that we did before distance learning, that now just make it all the more sort of relevant for students and easier for us in the distance learning. They do their found poems. And then the last two slides, I think, are two of the most important, the reflection on the topic. And so, you know, again, these are done as presentations in class. So both the teacher and I, you know, we both write our comments on the rubric, and we give both of them, we both give feedback and do the grades together. So that is something that we grade together. With the 11th and 12th grade classes, so both these teachers are in the STEM program. Oh, and I guess our time is up. Sorry. You got me talking about research, the research lessons, and I'm just going to go on and on and on. So hopefully that's, you know, my goal in talking about collaboration was that, you know, again, like, really think long term, be clear on your vision and the values that you're bringing to your campus, and don't let people ask you to compromise that, and find the people who will be excited about that with you. You know, and build these collaborations, and it takes time and just, I think, persistence to let that happen. So, like, you know, for that lesson that Dr. Norton and I are doing, I think we're going to our 5th or 6th year now working on that together. So this one was from, I think, last spring. Yeah.
I'm not sure if there's somebody else who needs this room after us.
Yes. Okay.
No,
I don't.
Yeah, you can continue with the conversation on Discord. That's a great place to go.
Absolutely. So I will make sure I put a post in there. I'll post the link to the presentation, and I will go in there right now and fix that form. You know, even if you don't want to use the form, hopefully those questions will be useful. And so hopefully, you know, that that somehow helps, answers your questions. I know some people were talking about collaborating outside the school. I don't know if this helps with that or not, but thank you so much for coming. And you have my email. I will be around at the conference. Find me in the Discord hallway. And I'm happy to chat and answer any questions, and share anything that, you know, any other resources in here that you can't quite access. Thank you, Shelley, for hosting.